Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lauren Meeker, and I'm the General and Artistic Director of Opera San Antonio. I want to take this moment to welcome you back to what I am calling a very special episode of our ongoing live interview series, Beyond the Production. Today, I am absolutely thrilled and honored to be able to share an extraordinarily important guest. He's been a part of Opera San Antonio's history almost since the beginning of the company. Everybody, please join me in welcoming Mr. Garnett Bruce to our interview today. Hi, Garnett.
Hey, Lauren. Thank you. Thank you very much for that.
Great. So welcome, Garnett. Let me give a little more intro to the audience, and then we'll kick it off with some questions for you for today.
Yeah.
So for those of you who may or may not know, Garnett Bruce is a brilliant stage director and colleague. This will be his, this will be his fourth production with Opera San Antonio. And also Garnett has served for several seasons as an artistic advisor to the company as well. So we're really lucky to have one of my favorite terms, this fabulous partner in crime with us. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Garnett.
You're quite welcome. And it's great to always be collaborating with you because opera is the ultimate in collaboration. So thank you.
Very much so. I couldn't agree more. So Garnett, what we're going to do today to help introduce you to our audiences and also to help introduce our piece, our upcoming production of Don Giovanni, is get a little background story on you. And we're open to anybody who's watching online in real time to join in the conversation and ask us questions as we go. But I want to start by going way back, Garnett. And one of our favorite questions to ask on this program is, can you remember, or what was your first really inspirational artistic moment, whether that was something you yourself performed in or maybe viewed as an audience member?
For me and opera, I was really lucky. I was a choir boy at the National Cathedral in Washington. And at 9 years old, we were invited to be the fairy chorus in A Midsummer Night's Dream outdoors at the Filene Center, which is the 6,000-seat outdoor venue on the way to Dulles Airport. And there were 36 of us. They gave us numbers. So I was fairy boy number 5.
Oh, my goodness.
Because of the B. And we had 4 weeks of rehearsal, and I got paid $100 for 4 performances.
All right.
But one of the things I remember is that the scenery was done on the cheap. And to create the columns for the final scene, they really had just painted banners. And they said, whatever you do, don't touch them because they'll wiggle. Don't even go anywhere near them.
Okay.
And so the night of the first performance, a thunderstorm comes along. So we didn't touch the banners, but God did. And they were flapping and flying all over the stage.
Oh, my goodness.
But it was just amazing to be part of an ensemble. And so my operatic career began with Benjamin Britten. And so it goes out in both directions from there. But being on stage, being a performer, feeling that frisson, that energy of a crowd, and also that joy of live theater and an ensemble was just, I mean, it's intoxicating. And so you keep trying to get back to it. And so, you know, I was always doing theater, much to my parents' chagrin, in high school. And then when I got to college, I was supposed to be a history major. And I still love history, but I am now a drama and English major, and hung out in the theater a lot and connected the music department and the theater department to do opera productions during my time there. And then that led to professional gigs and a summer in Santa Fe and being on the scene crew there and then working up through production. And then at a certain point, like you, we moved to the front of the house and you start assisting directors, and then suddenly the director doesn't show up and they're like, you do it. And you kind of get your wings and you're kicked out of the nest. And
yeah,
so I love telling stories for a living. And but that's, we can say it began at Wolf Trap on a very sweltery summer, singing.
I love it. So I'm going to jump in real quick because on one of our channels, Michael Chioldi has hopped on and said, hello, friends. So I just want to acknowledge that he's joining us today. Michael is, I think, near and dear to both Garnett and myself and Opera San Antonio. So lovely to see you, Michael. Thanks for jumping in. Garnett, I want to back up a step because what we have found through this interview series is really that every artist's path into where they are now is quite different, not only in terms of in the arts, but in opera. So to hear from you that you started as a choir boy, and also to hear that you like telling stories, it makes sense to me as an insider how one ends up as a stage director. But there actually aren't a lot of us that end up going that particular route. So what was it? How did you learn about stage direction? What called you to it? Could you talk a little bit about how your path took that particular direction as opposed to, say, staying with singing?
Well, nobody wants to hear once my voice changed. That ship sailed.
Okay, fine.
And I am loud, mainly because I'm usually working in big stinking opera and chorus rehearsals and super rehearsals with hundreds of people. And I learned how to project being a cathedral choir boy, so that skill set never left. And it was great to be in charge, because I could be helpful to those people who do have the talent to sing and act and move you to tears or peals of laughter. And by helping sort of, in some ways, organize. I mean, there's a pejorative sense for our work that we're traffic cops, but there's a certain time of the day where you don't want people running into each other. And then if that's the foundation, then we can build from there and start to understand character and history and music and what this power of this spellbinding brand of theater can do. And so assisting great folks, the John Copleys, the Francesca Zambellos, the people who are some of the magicians of our world. I also got a reputation for assisting non-opera people like David Hockney or Bruce Beresford, film director, or people who don't speak opera but have a story to tell. And we just have to figure out how to make the machinery support everything that's happening. And then, you get a chance to fly the plane yourself. And, one of the things that I, as somebody who loves history, I'm always looking at the research and the core of these things. And, the French Revolution was going on right now, or, the American Civil War was happening, or, this person was dealing with the after effects of World War I, and, how does that affect what's going on? And I try and hopefully surround our process with art and history and letters and things that might have made sense to the composer so that we can help digest that and help it make sense to an audience.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about process, and let's use it specifically through the scope of Don Giovanni, which, to reiterate for anybody who might just be joining us, you're directing our upcoming production of Don Giovanni, which will have performances here in San Antonio on the 7th and the 9th. It's not your first time directing Giovanni, is sort of part one of where I'd love this conversation to go. But also this particular piece is riddled with, I think, brilliantly treacherous concepts to bring to life that are also very relevant. That's sort of part two of what I'd love to talk about. And part three is I think we're doing it in a really unique way, specific to this production. So let's start with the beginning of those parts. Talk to me a little bit about your history with this particular piece and what draws you to it.
Well, understanding any Mozart opera, I really thank Leon Major, a theater and opera director who I got to know. And I launched into it, the Mozart operas, with Figaro being on stage crew. And some of my great memories are waiting to shift the scenery at the end of the night. And we're all sitting backstage at Santa Fe looking at a starry sky, listening to Act 4. And it is some of the most sublime music ever written, when the Countess forgives the Count for being a curmudgeon and a philanderer. But you're looking at this great, amazing landscape. And it was my first time in the American Southwest. I grew up in Washington, D.C. So this was all foreign and strange and beautiful and touching and thrilling. And then you're like, what else did they write? I want to know about the sequel. And so you start working on Così, which taught me about Recit, and then I got to Giovanni. And having seen a bunch of them, there's the comic side of it, and then there's the serious side of it. And when you get too serious, you're kind of snoozing. And when you get too comic, you're like, oh, do these people matter? And so that's the fine line that terrified me about this piece, and I avoided it.
Yeah.
And finally, a friend of mine who lights both opera and theater said, I've got friends who won't direct Hamlet because they're afraid they're going to make a bad step. Are you going to be that? There's sort of this challenge. And I'm like, no, I'm not. We're going to figure it out. And so you do the work. And so that in the process question, you start to find the angles of it. You start to read the research. You start to understand the arguments that librettist and composer must have had about worldviews. An Italian poet who had slept around and knew Casanova, and then this flirty wild child of Vienna.
Yeah.
And where is their personality, and what are they finding, and how are they challenging one another, and where do the characters have both sides? And suddenly the characters are multidimensional. And that's the great richness of the piece, that, you know, they grow up in front of us.
Yeah.
Or grow worse in the case of the monster, Don Giovanni. So that was my first production.
I think it would be safe to say, Garnett, that you and I probably have experienced, even just as audience members, a number of Giovanni productions over the year. And I think in both of our cases, had a chance to be involved in a production or directing a number of productions. And I'm curious to know from your perspective, how your thoughts on the piece as a whole or the characters themselves may move and shift and morph over time, which I think is part of just who we are as artists and how we analyze pieces. But could you give us maybe a for example of where you started with perceptions of characters and where you may now find yourself in late September of 2021?
Right. When I approaching it for the very first time and seeing it, I don't remember where my first one was, but there was that sort of that rakish cavalier aspect with, you know, the funny sidekick in Leporello. And so that was kind of like, you know, the road trip via all these stock characters, but yet those two central characters. And then you do wrong, you're going to hell, punishment, and, you know, grand theater effect, which is also something that, you know, I love grand opera, and so we get the chance to, you know, burn the house down. But as I started researching my first production, you realized that Mozart wrote the character of Zerlina for the woman who had premiered The Marriage of Figaro as Susanna. Not the Countess, but he was appealing to the peasants. Maybe that was good box office, but she's the one that actually figures out how to turn off the Don with help from all the other characters. And so there was a richness in, like, you know, it's too late for Anna, it's too late for Elvira, but it's not too late for Zerlina. And so she sort of helps everybody out of the abyss and the depression and the bigger serious issues that are flowing around all of this. And then preparing for this one, we had a special challenge because of the COVID protocols that we had to take 90 minutes, no intermission. And that you're like, oh my God, what part of the Mona Lisa would you like me to save?
Right. That is very true. Yes.
You want this half? You want that half? You want, you know, this half? And Bob Tweeton and I talked about it because we both really adore this piece, and I'm so lucky to have a colleague like Maestro Tweeton, who I've worked with over the years, who wants the pieces to become alive on the stage and are about finding that encouragement and those places for singers to discover and teach us about points of view and different ideas. But we focused on the crime and punishment aspects. So if we're going to tell the story of the evildoer goes to hell, we get to see crime, crime, crime. And then we see a group of people trying to solve the problem. And then we see the problem getting worse. And then finally the hand of God squelches the problem.
Absolutely.
So that was how we've edited our story. If you like what you hear, there's many other avenues to investigate. Every character has another aria you won't hear this time, but hopefully you'll hear soon, and they're all worthwhile.
Great. So I'm going to use this as an opportunity to jump in with a little more information about our production. And then we also have a couple of comments and questions coming in, which I'll share here, Garnett. So as Garnett has mentioned, this will be a 90-minute production, which we have picked the most action-packed, dramatically inspiring, and musically gorgeous version of that 90-minute tale. And I have to say, based on what I've heard in rehearsal and seen you all working with, it's really quite extraordinary.
Thank you.
But part of the reason we're doing that is to continue to make sure that for our cast, for our staff, and most importantly, and also with our audience, that everybody is staying as healthy and safe as possible. And due to the fact that these are indoor performances, we're still being cautious with length of exposure time with indoor venues. And therefore, the 90-minute format actually helps us be able to achieve a live production while we're still in the midst of a pandemic. And so my hat actually really greatly goes off to Garnett and the entire team of folks you've mentioned for putting together, I think, something that's really extraordinary and condensed. Now, as you've mentioned, that does leave a lot of really beautiful material, as they say, on the cutting room floor. And there are plenty of opportunities for folks to enjoy more if you come and join us and you hear what you like. I will also say, if you're new to opera, maybe not such a bad way to try something for the first time. It's a 90-minute commitment. And we think, as we experimented with Lucia in the spring, we're finding new audience members. It's a great way to dive in. So give it a chance if you haven't been with us before. Now, I just thought I would jump in here, Garnett, with a couple of comments. So we're getting a go Garnett from Matthew, which is lovely. I think he's very in tune with what you're saying. And we have a lovely question coming in from Jorge, which I think is actually great territory for us to dive into. So, how does a production decide to cast a baritone or a bass in the title role? What factors are taken into account on how you want the role represented based on voice type? Okay, so a couple of things I think that I'll just weigh in first and bounce some ideas off of you and turn it over to you, Garnett. So casting in the world of opera is a lengthy and, I'm going to say, wonderfully intricate process. So we're looking at long timelines in terms of finding artists who are available. We're looking at availability and the shows that we have coming up, and we're looking at what we think the demands of the house or a specific company are, and also how different kind of artists can best be represented within those roles. And I hope you will echo and feel these sentiments are true, Garnett, that really it's a collaborative conversation taking into account a lot of different perspectives. So specific to the question that Jorge is asking about Giovanni, would you talk to us a little bit about how that conversation went between you and our maestro, Bob Tweeton, names that we were considering, conversations here with OSA, and ultimately where we landed?
I'm not really sure who else we were thinking about at this point, because we've been dedicated to this cast for 2 years.
That's fair.
But I believe Giovanni, when he goes up into the higher ranges, and we knew we were always going to keep the serenade, that a slightly lighter baritone coming out of the Count Almaviva mode was going to suit us rather than a darker, lower sound, because there's the Act 1 finale, and we're balancing ensembles. And Giovanni and Leporello sing together. And how do you distinguish them? And so we opted to go lower for Leporello and a little higher for Giovanni in terms of our ideas. And it's a similar sort of idea when you're going with Anna, Elvira, and Zelina. You need to have distinctions between all three of those voices because of the way they're written. Sometimes they're all going to sing that same three-note phrase, but we want to make sure they don't sound like each other. The tenor, there's only one. So, and then we know that the punishment is the deep bass of the show, the Commendatore, Donna Anna's father, who comes back as the statue. And he doesn't really need to sing with anybody else. There is a trio of the three men in the very first 10 minutes of the piece. And these ensembles are something that are unique and kind of wonderful to the Mozart creation. And so balancing those out, those would be factors, radiant singers, but how do they blend? How do they combine. And it's an ensemble piece, which means that you have to listen and react to one another. So with our experience, we were also choosing artists who are, quick and alive and thoughtful and contributing to a collaborative process. I mean, these are the people you want around your dining room table to tell you this story. And, they're going to be angry and they're going to be comfortable with one another, and they're going to talk and listen and respond to each other. And that's also part of our process when creating a rehearsal room, as you well know, Lauren, and that this team then has a focus. So I hope that answers the question.
It does, and I'm just gonna jump and tag on to that, which is to say that our Giovanni Craig Verm is actually watching right now. So shout out to Craig. And what may also be fun for folks watching to hear is that, as we mentioned, this can be quite a collaborative process in terms of finding the right cast overall. I'm very pleased to say that everybody who has joined us for this cast, in particular Craig, was right at the top of our we must have them casting in mind when we were looking at this project even a few years ago pre-COVID. And what's extraordinary, as you've mentioned, Garnett, I think about this art form is that at its core, it is magical, beautiful music and story combined. So what we then take and hold, I think, to our honor as the folks who are producing opera is looking at the casting to make sure that we can create a magical combination of people that will represent this to the highest musical quality that we can. Mm-hmm. That gives us an extraordinarily multifaceted and diverse cast that allows us to bring wonderful singing actors into the room to tell this story. And sometimes it can be a complicated puzzle piece to find the right group of people. And sometimes it comes together magically and very easily. It depends on the process, but it is quite intricate in terms of voice type and size and scope of role and how all of the characters come together, not just one. Is that fair to say, Garnett?
I would. And I'll tell you a story here at the hotel. Talking with the front desk, and the woman is like, I love it when the opera comes to town. We have these great voices walking up and down the hallway. And says, I did a little research, and apparently the end of this show is the most famous thing Mozart ever wrote. And, the voice of hell and the voice of God comes onto the stage, and I have to see this. And I said, and who do you think is the ghost? She said, oh, is it the tall guy? And so
love it.
So she's, she could tell from the casting, if there was one of the people she's seen walking by her front desk, she's like, that guy is the Punisher. So
yes, I love it. Well, so I'm going to address Jorge's writing a follow-up comment, which I think is good for us to address. Thanks for the insight. Bummed out about 90 minutes, but can't wait for it. Don Giovanni has been a lifelong obsession of mine, and my wife and I finally get to experience it. Thanks for all you do. Jorge, we're really excited about the 90-minute production. It's also very hard. We understand those sentiments. It can be hard when there are pieces that have to get sacrificed from within this beautiful opera. And yet I can promise you that this cast is not to be missed. And this particular group is not to be missed, even within this 90-minute production. So we're so thrilled that you're taking the opportunity to come join us. Okay, Ben is chiming in. Is there a way for people who are not able to be in San Antonio to experience this production? So there's a short answer to that, Ben, and a long answer to that. So the short answer is that in the moment, we're presenting these as live performance opportunities for our audience here in San Antonio. Also, Ben is saying hi, by the way, which is great. Hi, Ben. So yes, we're going to do these live. Oop, I can see Garnett is having some technical difficulties, but I think he's still with us. I'll give him a moment to work that out. But Ben, to finish your question, or my response to your question, I'm going to go ahead and say that we are very excited to also be able to look at options going forward when perhaps a future live stream or release could happen. That is part of what we look at with our all of our productions here, and actually something that's really super important in the era of COVID, where we're constantly examining new ways to be able to share our performances with audience members, both here in San Antonio and ultimately across the globe. So Ben, if you can't get here now, I'm so sorry. Hang tight with you, and hopefully we'll see you in San Antonio soon. So I now see that Garnett is having technical difficulties, which hopefully he'll be able to rejoin us. If not, I'm going to continue forward just for a moment to give everybody some more information. First, Craig Verm, our Don Giovanni, is chiming in, and he's saying, also, I'm really impressed with how skillfully the cuts were made to keep the core of the story intact. It is gorgeous and quick. Wonderful opportunity for opera newcomers to whet their appetite for sure. And Craig, I couldn't agree with you more. It is absolutely really sort of amazing how these cuts have streamlined the production without feeling like you're sacrificing story and music. And I think it actually can have quite a powerful impact. So I'm glad to hear that you're feeling that way too. And thank you for weighing in. As for our upcoming productions, so let me mention that those are going to be on October 7th and October 9th here in San Antonio at the Tobin Center for the Performing Arts. And you're going to hear an absolutely extraordinary cast who is very excited to present this power-packed version to you. If you're interested, tickets are still available, and you can go online to our website, which I put a banner up at the bottom of the screen. That is operasa.org. And you can find out all sorts of information on our cast, on the production, and there are tickets, a link for tickets that are available as well through that website. So please, we do hope that you will come on out and join us. And I do see that Garnett is in the process of reconnecting. So in just a moment, I'll add him back into the screen here. And hopefully he can give us some parting words of wisdom as we look ahead to our Giovanni, which is 1 week away. It seems amazing, but we're 1 week out. So, hi, Garnett. Sorry we lost you there for a minute. Welcome back.
Okay, hi. Sorry.
No worries. We live in the technological era where things go awry and we roll with it. I'm just thrilled you were able to rejoin us. So we're about to wrap up here, Garnett. I was just saying while you were away, giving some information on the production and where people can grab tickets. But I would love for you to give us some parting thoughts and words of wisdom on this particular piece or your approach and the work you're doing within the cast, because amazingly, we are 1 week away from opening.
This is the point where we start connecting the dots. And this is where we realize how quick some of the transitions need to be, but it also helps us find them. Most of these singers have done the roles before, so they know the parts that are missing, and we're filling them in. We're stuffing as much of the story into our framework as we can, because the characters are rich, and the moments are rich, and the lessons are rich. And we also are backed up with a series of projections, which have been fun to work on. Katie Tucker, Katie Tucker, and her associate Blake with us on Your Lucia production have given us sort of a watercolor world in which to set our characters in front of. And we're approaching this from a period late style. Mozart would have known the silhouette, if not the costume itself. And so we're going to be starting to add those layers in. It's like theater. We add the theme, we add the costumes, we add the lighting, we add the elements, and bring them into the mix so that it just leaps off the stage. And,
well, we are brilliantly looking forward to leaping with you, Garnett. I can't say enough to everybody who's watching about the excitement that I feel in the room. And I know that audiences will be thrilled to join us. So unfortunately, Garnett, we're still having some technical difficulties with your Wi-Fi connection, but I'm going to thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. We're absolutely honored here at Opera San Antonio to be able to have you with us and have Bob Tweeten back in our pit collaborating with you. And a big shout out to the entire cast who's been able to join us for this performance. Once again, you can head to operasa.org to grab tickets for our upcoming performances. And this simply is not to be missed as we continue our return to live performances. And we're thrilled for the opportunity to share our first ever Mozart opera with the community of San Antonio. We hope you have a wonderful lunch hour. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.